Welcome back to the Bring It Out podcast, your go-to show for all things career exploration and youth empowerment. We're working to change the dominant career narrative and connect high-level industry leaders with the incoming generation of talent. I'm your host, Juman, and today I'm sitting down with Victoria Vicari, the founder of The Career Scientist. Victoria has mastered the art of helping brilliant STEM minds translate their lab skills into impactful, high-level industry roles. Today, we're going to talk about how you can move from the lab to a high-paying industry role. So it's great to have you, Victoria, and please feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jaman. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, really excited about what you're creating. So I have a background in biomedical science, biomedical engineering, also dabble into some chemistry, and I really wanted to create an impact in healthcare. And when I was thinking about my careers, I thought, well, I think industry is the right way to give the most impact possible. I did that for a couple of years. I worked in clinical trials in the regulatory side, and then I became a career coach, sort of just a little bit through destiny, I could say, by helping scientists also do the same transition. And it's been really incredible so far.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who are new to the show, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So let's go ahead and get started. So Victoria, you target a massive pain point in the STEM world where scientists spend years in the lab, but they often aren't taught how to translate those same academic skills into high-paying corporate or industry roles. So put simply, how do you help scientists move from the lab to industry? And what's the biggest mistake that you see them make when they try to translate their academic experience onto a corporate resume?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. So first, I developed a framework based on what's worked with me many years ago when I was transitioning and based on what's been happening with my clients. And what I developed is a framework that keeps into consideration many factors. So the first one is really on identifying your skills. Because you've been a scientist for many years now, you probably have so many projects you worked on, so many experiences. How do we define what those skills are? And once we know our skills, we also know where we fit in the big industry landscape. And then we can start to map out roles that fit not only with our personality traits, not only with our skills, but also our desires, our long-term career goals. So I really take them through a framework of understanding your skills, your value. How do you translate that? And then the next part is really about boosting your visibility as a scientist, something which we aren't really taught in the academic scientist world. And that part, the networking part, is completely new and different, and we don't really get a handbook or instructions on how to do it properly. So that is how, in a superficial overview, how I lead them to finding a job in the industry. And the mistake that I see on CVs is that they try to detail everything they've done so far. So they'll talk about this one project and this other project, and they might be fully unrelated, and it's hard to see the link. So they cannot really connect the dots between all of their experiences. So that's like one mistake that I see, where on a corporate CV, you have to be a bit more selective and really show how your journey connects and show your next logical path.
Thank you so much for that. And I also wanted to add on that a lot of people in the STEM field and scientists in general are introverts who would rather, be at a lab bench than at a networking event. So how do you coach people to, specifically network and build connections, especially on LinkedIn, without feeling awkward or cringy?
Yeah, I get this question quite a lot, like, oh, I don't like networking because it just feels so fake or it feels a bit cringe.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to lead with curiosity or interest about the other person. So when you find somebody that's interesting, go to their profile, check and see if you can point out something that is really interesting to you. Like, for example, oh, I saw that you switched from being a scientist to becoming a product manager at a health tech company. That's really interesting. Or maybe someone switched and went to marketing. So point that out to them in your initial message. Like, hey, I saw that you made this really interesting pivot 4 years ago into marketing after being a scientist for a couple of years. Can I ask you 2-3 questions about that pivot? So when you lead with curiosity, with interest, suddenly it's not cringe because you're not robotic. And it's only cringe when you say, hey, you have a cool job. Are you hiring? like that is because it's more transactional. So just keep that humanness. Don't try to LinkedInify yourself where you try to act too formal or using ChatGPT to write your messages, just be human. Just talk how you would normally talk to somebody. Like, hey, I'm really impressed by this post you made, or like, congratulations on your podcast. Just something relevant, timely about someone, and that's how you break into a conversation.
100%. And Victoria, I also recently looked into data showing that employers are caring less about the specific major that someone is going into and more about, what skills does this person have? What can they actually do? And so how are you seeing scientists use digital portfolios or personal brands to prove their capabilities before an interview?
Yeah, I love this question because I think portfolios are really underutilized. Actually, I only knew portfolios as online websites that art majors had to talk about their paintings or talk about the story about what inspired this statue or something like that. But now I really think that we can leverage digital portfolios and personal brands as a sort of pre-interview check, which means that recruiters and companies will be looking at your LinkedIn. They will be scrolling, seeing if you have a portfolio. They will check it out, and you're already judged on that. Like, how much do you care about your career? Which projects are you putting forward? How do you show the impact of your work? And I think it's fantastic. I've really been pushing my clients to create digital portfolios so that when they also start conversation with recruiters, they can link it in the message like, hey, by the way, here's my portfolio detailing how I could add value to the project. So I really think it's an incredible tool to utilize. Absolutely.
And with the rise of AI tools, ChatGPT hit the markets a few years ago. We've been seeing AI tools do a lot of the heavy lifting that scientists traditionally do. So how has the job hunt changed for entry-level scientists over the last year because of AI?
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of roles disappear, but what I can say as to how to combat that is actually focus on the skills that AI can't do, which is your soft skills, and really how you communicate, how you show how you have collaborated between different departments. Maybe you collaborated with a different institute or a different high school or a different university on a project. So showing soft skills is really also as scientists that are a bit more introverted, a bit more used to being alone on the lab bench, figuring out a protocol or an experiment. We have to show that we are social people that can do something that AI can't. And another thing is that you have to also think that AI, it's going to be slowly. So I don't want everyone to be scared that they will not find jobs. I think that with the AI age, a lot of new roles will be created where you can show how you use AI in your work. So something I always say is in your CV and during interviews, also mention how you're currently using AI tools in your work to be more efficient, to get data that is more reproducible. So weave that in to your CV. Like, you can have a section AI tools, or as a bullet point, leveraged AI tools to increase my productivity by 20%, for example. And then during interviews, show that you're forward thinking and ask the interviewer, how is the company using AI? For example, at my previous company, they were using AI to improve the communication between hospitals and our company so that our data was shared. So that is a really good way to ask companies how they're currently using AI to make processes better.
Thank you for that. And I'd also really like to touch on your career coaching program, the Career Scientist. So through this platform and through the people that you've worked with personally, what is one habit or mindset shift that you see that separates the scientists who land the high-paying industry roles quickly versus the ones that kind of stay stuck in the application loop?
Oh, actually, this is such a difficult question because every situation is so different. Some people, they have been searching for 6 months really intensively every single day, and they haven't gotten that little like good timing or that one person that could really help them out. And then some people on week 2 of the program, they already land an interview, they get an offer. So it really is dependent on their goals, on their mindset, on what they have tried before. But really what I can see is that the people who get a job quite quickly, they never give up. They try again when it's tough. If they get a rejection, they don't let it break them down. They say, it's not my first one. It won't be my last one. I'm just going to keep going. And they really believe in themselves. So some people have this innate confidence that everything will work out, everything will be fine. So keep believing in yourself and in your vision, and it will eventually happen. It's just a matter of time.
Do you think, like now with this current economy, and with the rise of AI, that scientists should start like pivoting or using AI tools and AI skills more, like in their interviews or in their portfolios, to kind of stand out from other applicants?
Do you mean using AI tools to practice your interviews, or do you mean while you're having an interview, having an AI tool that helps you out? Could you maybe clarify exactly what
Yes.
you mean?
I was thinking that a lot of companies nowadays, they want their candidates to be proficient in certain AI tools, as part of the job. So do you think scientists should take an online course or something to become more proficient with AI tools as they enter like a corporate job?
Yeah, I get you. Totally get what you mean now. So that's a great question. So this is what I see as upskilling. So seeing what does the job require? How can I really stand out? And can I take any courses or certifications on my own right now to prepare myself for the job so that I can beat the 300, 500 other applicants? So indeed, taking courses on certain databases that certain companies use can be helpful to show that you've already used these softwares, because sometimes in interviews they ask, have you already used this specific database software? So that's definitely something I suggest. And then in terms of AI tools as well, showing how it helps your proficiency, your productivity, those are also really great ones. But I think that they are job specific. So you would have to dive in and see, okay, what is this company requiring from me in this role? And then make a decision from there.
And do you think it's like possible for like a scientist to enter a field they've like never entered before? Like you mentioned like marketing. Could a scientist like make that pivot or they enter a field that like they don't really have that much work experience in before?
So I definitely think it is possible when you think about your transferable skills. So transferable skills are what can you take with you to your next role? And that knowledge or that expertise isn't exactly the same, but if I know this skill, I'll be able to learn this one quite fast. So it shows that you can adapt quite quickly. You'll be able to get your onboarding and then join the team and do great work. So when you think about marketing, if you break it down into little chunks, it's understanding the client's needs. So for example, it's a medical device and they're trying to sell it. You understand what is the user's use, what solution are we giving the patient with this device? So how do we market it so that we can also create partnerships with other companies to get profit? So all of that a scientist has, because it's critical thinking, it's thinking ahead, it's being structured, it's being logical, being organized. And sometimes in marketing, you have to know what the product does, and the scientist will be well versed on that and how to use it. So I definitely think it's possible to pivot if you understand the field that you're getting into and you understand which skills you can bring with you to that role.
Thank you so much for that. And Victoria, I also think that when scientists traditionally view like industry roles, they usually just like think of it as like a different lab bench at a bigger company. So what are some of the most lucrative non-bench roles in biotech or pharma that scientists are perfect for, but they rarely apply for?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's so many roles out there. Like in theory, you know that there's so many things you can become, but then it might be confusing to know what these roles are called or where to find them or what even are the options out there. Because what I also found in high school and university, no one really told us many job titles.
Yeah.
It was just, oh, you'll get a job later, everything's going to be fine. But then they don't tell us what that specific like job is called. So what I suggest, especially for my clients that are biomedical scientists and they really want to join like biotech, pharma companies, one really cool role is going into life science consulting. You work on many different projects, you get to know many different companies, and you also test out your critical thinking, your presentation skills, your collaboration, and you also have a hand on making decisions in healthcare. Like, for example, should we use this treatment or should we sell this kind of medicine? So consulting, life science consulting is a really great one that scientists can get into. The next is everything related to clinical research. So clinical trials, and that is a big umbrella term which can then be split into regulatory affairs or medical affairs or data analysts or bioinformaticians or data management. So it can really branch out. So I think that that's also a really lucrative types of roles.
100%. And this question also builds more into the industry and corporate roles. So if a student or a scientist is spending all day analyzing data, managing lab inventory, how do we translate those exact daily tasks into, corporate buzzwords like project management or quality assurance?
So I think what you're asking here is how do I translate just my tasks that I've been doing in the lab into something that's relevant for companies to make them see my value, see that I can add to the project, to the team. And what I say to that as an advice to really pinpoint it is when you think about the task, like you mentioned, I'm analyzing data. Ask yourself the question, so what? What happens when I can successfully analyze this data? It tells me that A equals this and B equals that. But when I can do this successfully, how does that push healthcare forward? And what decisions does it enable? So taking it one step further, I always say we have to stretch our experience. It's like, okay, great that you analyze data, but if you tell me a bit more about it, like peel the onion layer, go a bit more in depth. What happens with the data? What does it tell us? So it's really a way to shift your mindset as well, to understand how is what I'm doing actually useful for these companies and how can they use my knowledge. And for example, for project management, you just simply have to think about, did I ever collaborate on multiple projects at the same time? Did I ever keep my team on time? Like, hey, we have to submit the assignment, we have to prepare the essay, we need to make the figures, the graphics for it. So can you show examples or specific scenarios where you kept the deadline for something, where you made sure that everyone knew their role? You know, in a group project, there's always somebody that is the mediator, make sure, okay, is everyone on board with this thing? Then there's always a person that is taking the notes, like, okay, I'll take the notes for the meeting. And then there's another person that is the plant, which means that he or she always has a lot of ideas, like, oh, but what if we tried it this way? And then there's another person that's like, okay, let's stay on track. We have the deadline in 2 weeks. Let's just stick to our plan. So to show the project management skills, do you have an example where you can show how you have collaborated and kept everybody on track? So that could be one example to show project management experience.
Thank you so much for that. And academia is, very well known and notorious for having, typically like lower pay, lower stipends, while industry, on the other hand, can be incredibly lucrative. So how should a student or, scientist or researcher overcome the mental hurdle of asking for a higher salary during negotiations without feeling like they're asking for too much?
Yeah, I think this is a question that everyone of us feels at some point when it comes to financial compensation, because no one will tell us, okay, you should ask for this number, you should ask for this number. So first of all, companies and recruiters, when they present you with an offer, they will expect you to negotiate. If you don't negotiate, they're like, oh, that was easy. She just took the first number. Okay. So they will be kind of taken aback that you didn't negotiate. They're expecting it, which is why sometimes they give you an offer that's slightly lower, because just to give themselves room in case you do negotiate. Think about it, if you are visiting a house and the real estate agent shows you the house and you look around, you're like, yep, perfect, I'm taking it. They're going to be like, oh, but you haven't even checked the kitchen yet. Or do you want to check the attic? Do we also want to check the garden? And you're like, no, like it's fine. Like I like what I see so far. They're going to be taken back a little bit. They expect you to ask questions, about the heating or the electricity and so on. So you are in your right to negotiate. Now, how should you think about it? So to prepare yourself for the negotiation, you should have a look at current market value. So there's a lot of websites online where you can compare different salaries based on different experiences, and you can understand your market value, market rate, so that in the negotiation you can then say, well, thank you so much for the offer, I'm really excited. I have seen that my experiences and my market value for this kind of role is around this number or in this range. Would it be possible for you to meet me there? So like this, you're prepared. And I would say, don't be afraid to do it, because if you get a no, That's it. It's just an email that will tell you, no, sorry, it stays at this number. And then, okay, but at least you tried. And if they say yes, there you go. You fought for what you wanted. And then another thing that is really important is how do you feel about that number? Because you've worked so hard, it could be the last 10 years you worked on yourself. You want you want to reap the rewards. You want to, you're creating a better life for yourself. So when you see that number, how does it make you feel inside? Sometimes you get that initial like intuition or gut feeling of this number, and then okay, I'm okay with this, or I want to ask more. So you will feel it intuitively if that's like the right number or not, and always follow that.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. Especially like for recent college graduates, it's like it's their first job, it's their first interview, and like they don't have the confidence usually to like ask for a bigger number. So it's helpful to always hear that perspective that, you are expected to be asking for more, especially when you have all this experience and the degree and everything.
Absolutely, yes.
And in terms of like the CV, in academia, like a CV is usually like, it can be 10 pages long. It can list, every research paper they've ever touched. But usually industry resumes are much shorter, like 1 or 2 pages maximum. So what is the first thing that a scientist has to delete from their CV when making this pivot from the lab to industry?
So this is a huge thing that I see, that academic CVs are usually very long and they have a big publication section with around 10 papers that were published. And when you think about industry, you actually have to say the same thing, but in way less words. So if we actually start with every section in the CV, so in the headline, you have your name and your contact details and 2 or 3 lines about who you are, your expertise, and then where you are headed. So I suggest that a lot of people put into their CV, into the profile summary, what kind of role they're aiming to get. And this, you can also tailor it for every single job that you apply for. And then I want us to go straight into the skills section. So going from academia to corporate, sometimes it's not so clear to the recruiter what your skills are. So you want the skills section to be in second place on the CV. And there it should be really concise. It should reflect directly into the role that you're applying for. So if the job ad in consulting says data analysis, you need to put data analysis in your skills. Then when we go straight into the work experience, I want all fresh graduates to list their bachelor degree or their master's degree as work experience, because I'm sure that you've had some projects. I'm sure that you've had some internships. I'm sure that you had, like the final research project in grade 12, some kind of big project that is experience. So this is the big thing. And then when we go into education, make sure to list everything, but don't put too many details. The details should be in the work experience section. And then let's see what else. There's certifications, there is languages, there is internal and external collaborations. So all of those should be on the corporate CV, but keep it short and concise, because in academia, it's almost like paragraphs sometimes that I see, and no one is going to read it. It's not a book, it's not a research paper. It should be short, succinct sentences, like phrases that just go from one line here to the other, not taking up more than 2 lines.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And Victoria, if someone's interested in, if they're watching right now and they're interested in joining your career coaching program, how can they reach you?
So you can reach me mainly on LinkedIn and Instagram. So at Instagram, my handle is The Career Scientist. And there you'll be able to DM me and we can have a conversation, see where you're at and see where I can help you. And on LinkedIn, it is Leticia Victoria Vicari, where you can also find me.
Thank you so much. Perfect. And all right then, thank you, Victoria, for sharing these insights with us. I'm sure they'll be immensely useful for scientists who are looking to pivot from the lab into industry. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Juman, for everything. Thank you so much.